Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy, a Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison.
Greetings, compadres. Yay! So excited about today. I am pumped to have my guest that I have on today. I've been looking forward to it, saw it on the calendar, and I was just like, so excited. So I just want to say welcome back, listeners, to Eternally Amy. I wanted to start out with, for the mystery meat sandwich, before I introduce my guest, I wanted to start out with just a quote that I couldn't find who this is supposedly by. I've just seen it in multiple sources, but I couldn't find like one person to attribute it to. And the quote is, "We recover out loud so that others don't have to suffer in silence," which you may or may not have heard before. And so, of course, people experience their recovery in a variety of ways. And some people are very private about their recovery and their sobriety journey, and others are not. And it's all fine. It doesn't make a difference in terms of the quality of your recovery or anything like that. It's just kind of like up to you how you want to do things. But personally, I have found for myself that recovering out loud has made all the difference for me. And that's because I get the opportunity to connect with other people. And by sharing my story, then I get to hear their story. And we find this common ground that is so beautiful. And it's like we both have survived these treacherous paths to get to where we are at this moment in time. And I just can get chills thinking about it. So for me, that has worked so well. And the reason I think that quote came to mind today is because my guest today is Claire Hatwell. And she is a wife, she's a mother of 4, and an author who shares her journey through her books and social media to challenge the stigma around addiction and recovery, and to provide support to those who are just questioning their relationship with alcohol, as a lot of people do from time to time. She is the author of the book, My Not So Secret Recovery. I love that title. And she was originally a blogger, and it is called My Not So Secret Diary. She's been doing that for the past few years. But this is her first book, which is so exciting. And in addition to that, she is a qualified sober coach, and she was the Cornwall ambassador for Be Sober, which I'm not even sure. What does that stand for, Claire?
It's community interest company. So it's, nonprofit.
Nonprofit. Okay. Fabulous. And P.S., she writes under the pseudonym Hattie Wells, and she writes contemporary romance. What? It's so exciting. So Claire, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi. Hi. Nice to meet you properly. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of give the floor to you and allow you an opportunity to share however much or little you would like to share about your recovery journey, your story, and how it unfolded and how it all kind of got you to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to have to apologize first. I do have a cold, so I'm sorry if I cough, but I'll do my best.
Yeah. No.
So I'm obviously from the UK. We have quite a drinking culture over here. We have alcohol for everything, and it's promoted from a really young age. You see it everywhere. So it's quite normal to drink in the evenings. It's quite normal to drink and in the afternoons and the evenings, weekends, without it even being a celebration. And I used to have a very stressful job. So when I came home, it was mummy wine time. I was cook dinner, I would have a glass of wine. Perfectly fine. That's what everybody did. But I suppose as the years went on, I didn't see it creeping up. And if you drink one glass of wine a night for long enough, one glass isn't enough, and it becomes 2 and 3. But it's okay because everybody does it and it's socially acceptable. It's wine. We're allowed, aren't we? That's what the supermarkets tell us. That's what you see wherever you look on TV. And of course, I show what I want people to see. And as long as I kept my game face on, nobody would know. So I kept doing everything I'd always done. I have 4 kids. At the time when I was drinking, I had 3. They're very close in age. And it was busy. So I would constantly be on the go. And I'm also a very anxious person. So it was hard to calm my mind, quieten my mind in the evenings when I'd come home from that job and I'd want to sit down. My husband used to work long hours. He still does, but he used to work away a lot. So when I was sitting there overthinking, my companion, my thing to quieten me down, and I used to think it would solve things, was a glass of wine. As I've said, it went on for a long time. And at the height of my drinking, I was drinking 3 bottles of wine a night by myself. Now, that's not okay, not by any stretch of the imagination. But to the outside world, I still looked fine. I still got up and I went to work and I looked after my kids and I paid my mortgage and I had a happy marriage. And I didn't ask anybody for help. So I was fine. Also, I kept telling myself, I suppose inside, I knew it wasn't right. But anytime I tried to broach it with somebody, they would kind of brush it away and say, but you're all right. Because the perception I gave of myself was I'm all right. And I suppose I'd been very scared of admitting that I wasn't all right because I knew it would result in one thing, and that would be me stopping drinking. And I had no idea how that would look. I was terrified of stopping drinking because I felt like the world would end. Because everywhere you look, you're told you need to drink to fit in, to be social. And I couldn't see it. And so I put my head in the sand and pretended I was all right and hoped I'd believe it. It went on for far too long, really. I became the ninja that would fill up my glass when my husband was out of the room and hope he wouldn't notice. I'm sure he must have noticed, but I thought I was very clever. And I would stop putting my recycling out because there was so much glass and it was all mine. I couldn't bear the neighbours to hear it. So I had to take it to the recycling bank and hide it. I used to visit different shops because I didn't want anybody to know how much I drank. Because when you look at a bottle of wine and it tells you how many units are recommended, I was drinking more than a week's worth in a night. And yet I still pretended I was all right because I didn't know how to deal with it. It's a very isolating time because I think for somebody that's very anxious and concerned about how they look, how they come across anyway, to face up to the fact that you're addicted to something, ask for help and be told, oh, but you look fine, you're fine. It makes you question. And I began to think, well, maybe I am fine. Maybe I'm overthinking and people are going to think I'm an attention seeker for making this story up. Because you look, mistakenly, I was looking for rock bottom, and an alcoholic looks like somebody that hasn't got a job and sleeps on a park bench drinking out of a paper bag. That's how I saw it. And because I wasn't there, I couldn't possibly be that. And yet I was. And the more I look now, the more I see there are so many women like me that strive for perfection and stress out when they can't do it, but won't admit they are struggling, and they drink, because it doesn't solve anything, but it certainly numbs it. It stops your mind whirring. It stops you thinking about that conversation you had at the school gate where you feel like an idiot. Well, drinks enough wine and you can't remember that conversation. But it doesn't mean you behave differently. It doesn't mean you're okay. It just means you can't remember it. Yeah, so towards those, that last year of my drinking career was horrible, because I would wake up in the morning, and I never drank in the day. So again, I convinced myself I was all right, because alcoholics drink in the day. They don't need to when they drank as much as I did. But I would wake up thinking about drinking and thinking, like, tonight I won't have a drink. And then the day would go on and it would be stressful. So I'd think, well, maybe one will be all right. I'll limit myself to one. So I'd get home, and 4 or 5 o'clock, the witching hour, I'd have one. The minute the bottle was open, I would relax, because I'd know I could have something. But the minute the bottle was open, my limit was gone. My husband describes me as having no off switch. I have no off switch. And I know now, and I've been sober for over 6.5 years, I know that if I had a drink now, I would be back there. And it's not because I don't want to drink. I really don't. But it's like a thirst that can't be quenched. And I know I'd still be searching for that high that in the last few years, it wasn't there. Because if I drank enough to get me that feeling, I'd blacked out. And that's another thing. So in the last few years, I was blacking out all the time. And trying to piece together the night before while pretending you remember the film, the conversation, the book, the bump on my head. How did I do that? Well, don't you remember hitting your head on the tap when you were washing your face? No, I don't. Now I feel like a fool. Yeah, it really affected my mental health. They say your mental health is affected by drinking. Mine certainly was. And yeah, it was horrible. If I knew then what I knew now, I would have stopped a long time ago. But you could not have persuaded me that sobriety was a good way to go when I wanted to drink. It's very hard, isn't it? I'm sorry if I'm rambling.
No. Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat, literally, because everything that you're saying, I'm like, huh? Yep, been there. And so, no, please keep going.
Yeah, so I guess towards the last couple of years, we're talking 2015, 2016 was when I properly tried to stop drinking. And I didn't tell anybody to start with. I'd just try and put things in the way. So I got a job that was further away, knowing I'd have to drive further, thinking, oh, I won't drink as much. Yeah, well, that didn't work. That just didn't work. I thought I would do a degree alongside work and 3 kids, because I needed a bit more work to do. And I did it, but I still drank. And I think if I hadn't drunk, I probably would have got a better grade than I did. But, I still got a good one. So all these things, I couldn't put enough in the way to stop it. And in the end, I spoke to my husband, who was like, he's brilliant. He's put up with so much from me. He's been so supportive, but he didn't have a magic wand. And I kind of wanted a magic wand. I just wanted somebody to go, right, addiction gone, you're fine now. It doesn't work like that. And even when I made the decision not to drink that first day, it didn't get any easier. And there was 3 days, I remember it, in August, and I didn't drink for 3 days. And it was hard. I white knuckled it through those 3 days, but I did 3 days and decided I was fixed, because if I can do 3 days, that's fine. And then I started drinking, and of course it was straight back to, but I suppose what it did was I'd seen the other side. And I suppose the bit I've forgotten actually was I was quite unwell towards the end of my drinking. I lost so much weight. I look back at photos of myself and my head is like kind of too big for my little skinny arms and things. I didn't see it at the time. And everybody says they lose weight when they stop drinking. No, I put it on, but I didn't have any to lose. So I was really quite unwell, and I would have frequent migraines that would really affect the way I thought. And I remember being stuck at some traffic lights one day, looking at the 3 colours on the traffic lights, thinking, I don't know what they meant. And in the end, I went to the doctor and they said, actually, we're quite worried about you. You might have a stroke. Do you drink? And I was like, just a little bit. Because he's going to say, yeah, 3 bottles a night, actually. How about you? But again, it was one of those, okay. And all these little things began to add up to me thinking, yeah, okay, maybe I do need to do something. I still couldn't quite identify myself as an alcoholic. I do now. I am. And that's fine. It is what I am. But I just couldn't see it, because what mum like me is an alcoholic, but yes, there are lots of us. So I went down to my garden shed with a leaflet I'd been carrying around for months that I picked up in our doctor's surgery. And it was for an alcohol support charity. And I'd carried it around for months, but not been able to do anything with it. I felt so much shame just having it, that dialing the number was terrifying. And eventually I phoned it, and they were great. They were very impartial, listened to everything I had to say. And again, where I was expecting the magic wand, they just said, yeah, well, we've got a waiting list. We'll put you on that. And it took me 3 months, I think, to get a counsellor.
Oh.
By which time I was drinking again, because I just didn't know how to stop. Eventually, when I saw the counsellor, I didn't really get on that well with him. He was great, but he didn't really understand me. I suppose he was expecting the kind of alcoholic that I was expecting, and I wasn't that. So it was very difficult. But he did put me in a group, which I remember walking into and everybody looking at me going, well, what's she doing here? And I was kind of thinking, oh, what am I doing here? But they were the most supportive bunch of people. And one man, it was mixed, it was drugs and alcohol. And one man in there who, he'd been through an awful lot. He actually said, why am I here, and why haven't I got help? Why am I not in rehab? And he opened my eyes to the fact I could go to my doctor and ask for help, which I hadn't really imagined I could do, because I hadn't seen it as an illness. And I did. So I went to the doctor and explained everything. Again, feeling full of shame. Look at what I've done to myself. Look at me. I've put myself in a situation, and everybody must hate me. And I hate myself, because I did back then. And you forget that alcohol is an addictive substance. You blame yourself. And whether you look at it like an illness or a condition or whatever, you have to understand it's an addictive substance. And if you take something addictive, you're going to become addicted to it. And I was very much so. The doctor, they told me not to stop drinking because it was dangerous, because I was so dependent. And instead I had to cut down. They gave me a target. I think it's something like a glass of wine a week. And they prescribed me antabuse, which goes under different names. But basically, it doesn't take away the addiction. It doesn't take away the desire to drink. But what it does is give you side effects to drinking. So it basically makes you allergic to it. So if you take the tablet and you've drunk, you're going to be very, very ill. So in those few weeks between me stopping drinking and taking the tablets, I was very angry with myself. So I smashed a lot of wine glasses, because I kind of wanted to drink and I didn't want to drink, and I loved wine and I hated it, and I didn't know where I was. And the fact I was still drinking just made no sense to me. But I was just doing what I was told, basically. I made little graphs of the units of alcohol I was drinking and where I wanted it to be, and I was watching it going down, but it wasn't going down quick enough. And eventually I got close enough and I just stopped, and I thought, I can't do it anymore. I haven't got it in me to, it's the whole moderation thing. I can't do it. So I just stopped, which I don't recommend, but it worked for me. And I started taking the tablets, and like I said, they weren't a magic fix. What they did was give me the power back. If I got up and I took that in the morning, it was me telling myself, I am not going to drink tonight because I will be ill, and I can't do that because I've got kids. Mm-hmm. And all this time, my drinking had revolved around getting through the day, get up, work, home, jobs, kids in bed, drink, sleep, start again. So they'd never really seen, I wasn't aggressive, I wasn't angry, I wasn't any of those things. but I wasn't necessarily present, because and it makes me feel sad now to say, I would rush through life to get to drink. I don't do that anymore. It's nice, but you can't see it at the time. And suddenly I was faced with all this time, because I wasn't zoning out at the end of the day, and I wasn't there but not there. I was just there all the time. And wow, the days were long, and that really, really screws with your head when you're thinking, what do I do now? Where did all these hours in the evening come from? But it was hard, but there was no other way through it. And I wish there was some sort of magic wand to make it easier for people, but there isn't. Even then, they'd put me on a waiting list to go into detox unit, medical detox, and I would be in there for 3 days. They dose you up, you wake up, you're not addicted anymore physically, but mentally you are, and you have to work through that. And I really wanted that. I saw that as the easy way out. And I was like, yeah, just dose me up, wake me up when it's all over. But actually, in hindsight, you have so much work to do. It's not a phrase I particularly like, doing the work, but you do have to do the work to get through it, because you find out so much about yourself. All the things, all these situations that I'd avoided or drunk through or drunk around, it's very different when you're sober. It's not a bad thing. It's just very different. And there's a lot of learning to do. I think people sort of say you're like a newborn, and in some ways you kind of are, because there's a lot. I went to my first sober wedding in May, so like a couple of months ago. I haven't been to a wedding in about 12 years, and then to go to one sober, I was like, oh no, how am I going to deal with this? But it was lovely, and I remember it all. I was there for the whole thing. I danced with my kids. I didn't dance with my husband, I don't think, because he didn't get up and dance, but I would have done. And I remember it all. We had a lovely time, and we went home, and I'm not thinking, what happened? What did I say? Other people would wake up and have a hangover the next morning. I didn't. I got up and went to breakfast. And those are the situations you can't get that when you're drinking. But you don't see it when you're on the other side. It's a hard one.
Yes, it is. And I have to tell you, I just wrote all these notes. I just totally was blown away by your lovely story, because it's just so real. That is exactly what it is like as a newly sober person, and as somebody who's just dealing with those very last days of drinking, and should I not quit? Can I quit? And the whole self-doubt. And it's a miserable time, but it gets so much better. It's astounding how much better it gets. And I love that you said you would have gotten sober earlier had you known how good it was going to be. And I wonder that about myself too. I wonder, because people told me, did people tell you, oh, it's, if you quit drinking, you're going to have an incredible life. You'll be able to really embrace it. You'll be able to remember everything. Did anybody tell you that when you were getting sober?
I was the other way. People were not unsupportive, but I don't think they really understood. I think partly it was because my act was brilliant. Nobody would have known. I didn't let anybody know. And I held down quite a stressful job, the kids and everything. So I had a really good act. And I think really the only person that knew, well, me and my husband. And we didn't know any sober people. That's the thing. And it's so ingrained over here. And I had people telling me, people that I would have thought would be supportive, and don't get me wrong, people were, but they just didn't get it. But people that I thought would have been more supportive were like, oh, well, that's a shame. Can't you have one? Or what will you do? I was told I need beer at a barbecue. And I was like, yeah, thanks. I'm really trying here to spin the positives, and you're kind of like knocking me back down. So it did feel like a bit of an uphill battle there, I felt like I was trying to convince myself, and I was trying to convince everyone else. And I shouldn't have had to do that, because I just wanted people to be supportive. But I've come to accept not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to understand. And actually, sometimes it's not about me. Sometimes the fact that I am living this life without alcohol that's really good probably shines a light on people that wish they could do it, but are kind of where I was and haven't got to that point for whatever reason yet. So I kind of have to not feel sorry for them, but give them a bit of empathy, because it was hard for me. But yeah, it's not necessarily what you want. You kind of just want people to be like, wow, that's amazing, it's going to be brilliant. And I found very few people like that.
Well, and I think you bring up I think this is like a super important point too, is that I actually wrote down something here that you said about people. I wanted to get, brush it away, right? People were kind of like, oh, are you sure? Are you really sure that you're drinking too? Maybe you're just going through a hard time kind of thing. And I think that as an active, because I call myself an alcoholic as well, as an active alcoholic, when I heard anybody say anything like that, it was like, oh, good, I'm okay, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And it was like an excuse almost to keep drinking.
Yeah.
And I think, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's all I used to look for, was an excuse to keep drinking. So when people said things like that to me, that was like, brilliant, thank you. You've saved me. I don't have to stop.
Right? I mean, like 100%. Just like, okay, there's my license for today. And now I can keep going. But it's a fascinating thing. And I think that this is why it is so important that we keep talking about this. And I know that as a society, we have come a far way from what we used to be in terms of addiction, but we just really haven't come far yet enough, right? Where if you had all these things that you were capable of doing, holding down this job, mothering small kids close in age, and then adding a degree on top of it, to the outside person, they hear you say something like, I think I'm drinking too much. And they're like, yeah, no, because look at all these things that you're able to do. That's how they calculate this stuff, right? And it's amazing that we're able to hide behind. It's like, I remember just thinking, if I can just stay busy enough, then it will take the focus off of anything else that I'm doing. It was just like this big diversion to stay busy, stay busy. And I think that the more we're doing, sometimes people are just convinced like, oh, well, you're probably just stressed out. And I hope that we get to move that bar even further by really just pointing out, no, like when I started telling people I thought I was drinking too much, that was all for me a strategy. And I thought, if I can say that a couple of times to the right people who maybe had their radar on me that I was drinking too much, I mean, I like never wanted to quit. And so in my mind, if I could say this to a few people, then they'd know that I was kind of concerned about myself, and it would like make them feel better. And so I had this whole made up kind of thing going on in my head about, oh, well, I drank a little bit too much last night. So the people who were there, if I confide in them and just let them know, oh, I think I'm drinking too much, then that will like placate them for a while. They'll be okay. They won't be focused on me and my drinking, which I don't know if they were or not, but I wasn't as good of a hider as it sounds like you were. So I think mine was more out there. And yeah, and I think it's just one of those things that's just really, when we are really at that place where we are crying for help and we're like, no, I'm looking for support here.
Yeah.
And then somebody tells us that we're fine. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I overreacted.
Yeah. Or they kind of, I also had somebody say, well, you just need to moderate. Why do you need to drink too much? You're okay. Look at what you've got. And it's like, yeah, I know what I've got. Don't you think I wish I could moderate? Don't you think I've thought of that?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, I've just told you I'm struggling, and you've just gone, yeah, it's all about you, kind of thing. And it's unbelievable. But I do think things have come on. We speak so much more about it now than we did when I first got sober, definitely.
Mhm.
I don't think that's just because I'm more aware of it, but
Yeah.
I think I've made it my mission to speak more about it, because I don't ever want anyone to feel as isolated as I did. I felt so much shame, so much embarrassment, so much hatred for myself, and I felt like I was wrong. All of those things compounded onto each other, and I felt like I was the only one. And the minute I started reaching out, and like Instagram and things like that are brilliant, because you can just find people. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. Suddenly you found somebody else that gets it, and you don't even need to tell people like your real name, and they get it. And the minute I could talk to other people, or I didn't even talk to people in the early days, I just like watched and read posts, and I thought, okay, I'm not the only one. And I read like all the books, and I thought, there are other people. And that's why I share my story, because I just want people to go, okay, it happens. It's possible to get over it. And you know what? It's not a life sentence. It's actually quite good. There's like, sobriety's all right. It's okay. And I couldn't think about forever, because yeah, why would you want to live a life without alcohol? How would you do anything? How would you, even for us, like barbecues, we'd go to the beach in the evening, have a barbecue. It would involve wine and beer, everything. And I wasn't the person that went out to drink. I drank at home because I had young kids. So it was ingrained in every aspect of my life. And yeah, I don't miss it. I miss, and I can tell you honestly, the one thing I miss is holding a glass in my hand sometimes. And I could be like we went to a garden party. Sounds very posh, it's not, but a few weeks ago, and I wanted to hold a nice glass. It wasn't that I wanted to drink wine. I just wanted to have something nice, rather than, I don't know, Coke in a can. I just wanted something nice. But yeah, I don't miss alcohol at all. I don't miss the way it made me feel. I don't miss the uncertainty of my moods, because I was short of patience. The waking up the next morning and thinking, oh no, what did I text or post or say? As I told you, the blackouts. What did I watch or read? Who did I talk to? That, I know I would never want to go back to feeling like that. And if that's what alcohol gives you, wow, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Really.
Right. I remember I used to leave Post-it notes all over the place. Like, okay, we talked about this, had conversation with so-and-so. So like right before I would kind of black out, I would make a couple notes. I mean, it's a pathetic way to live life, really, if I think about it. But that's what I was doing. I mean, that's what my life was. I mean, that was the total summary of how my daily life became, and sad. And I'm wondering, okay, so take me from, so when you got sober, so you started just yourself, right? I mean, by the time all was said and done and back and forth with the counselor and everything, essentially you just did it on your own, right? Did you do a 12-step fellowship?
I just did it on my own,
Yeah.
and it was hard. So I'd reached out to this charity, and they had support. It's not 12-step. It was more talking, group therapy, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. But I live in a part of the country, there is nothing down here, and there is no provision. I think it's a bit better now, but there's really not very much. And we're quite rural. So, yeah, and it makes it harder. And like I said, people just, I don't think they really spoke about it. If I'd wanted to go to AA, I wouldn't have known how to get there, because there wouldn't, back then you wouldn't have found it. So I didn't. And also I was a bit afraid of the
Sure.
yeah, I was afraid of walking into a group of people that would know how to be sober when I didn't.
Sure.
Sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Fair.
But so I kind of just isolated myself, really.
Mhm.
I just didn't drink, and I hung on. And yeah, I had a couple of wobbles here, there, and everywhere.
Mhm.
And I knew at this point that it wasn't about moderating anymore. It was, I needed to stop. And
Yeah.
it was just difficult. Towards the end, right towards the end, we'd always talked about having another baby. And we found out I was pregnant, and I haven't had a drink since. And he's not the reason, he's just a blessing.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's been. But in hindsight, it's been harder, I suppose, because I had the first 9 months of my sobriety were because of him. So when then I'd never drunk in pregnancy. I just knew I wouldn't. So it was, although it was hard, it was okay. And then afterwards it was like, wow, now what do I do? And people would say, how long have you been sober? And I'd been sober, like even a year on, I'd been for a year or whatever, but it felt so short because it had been so long, that also such a short time I'd been doing it just for me. And yeah, so although I've been sober for 6.5 years, sometimes I feel like it's less than that, because if you take that time out, and it's just different.
Sure. Well, tell
But
me about how your blog came about too.
well, that was, I suppose, because I'd been so isolated. One of my best friends drank just as much as me, so I couldn't turn to her because she was my partner in crime. And when she'd know, I worked with her as well, so we'd say we weren't going to drink, and then I'd speak to her at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd both go, yeah, we'll be fine. And so I couldn't turn to her, because although she understood, she wasn't where I was. And I had other friends that I used to drink with in the evenings, and we'd go, all the kids would play in their gardens, and we used to have Tuesday night wine club, and we'd just drink I drank everywhere. And so yeah, I just isolated myself, and I needed to talk to somebody. So I started writing, and I'd always been a writer on and off, but it's one of those things that you want to do, and your parents say that's not a proper job, so you don't do that, and you get a proper job, and you wish you'd always done what you wanted to do. And I was scared because I hadn't really told. I'd found like telling people I was sober went down like a lead balloon. People either tried to fix it for me by telling me to drink, or didn't know what to say. So I didn't talk to anyone really. So I started writing my blog. That my name wasn't on it, my photos weren't on it. It was all very secret. You could probably tell what part of the country I lived in, because I'd come back from a yoga class and take a photo of the sky, but there'd be nothing in there that you would be able to identify me with. And it was called my not so secret diary, because it was secret, but not, it was all very much open, but nobody knew it was me. I had taken up running in sobriety as something to focus my anxious mind on, and never been a runner before at all. And now I've run 7 half marathons and got a bit obsessed with that as well. But because I'm not a very social person, I'm in an online running group. We don't meet. We have a Facebook group and you talk on there. If you see each other at a race, you say hello, but you don't train with each other. But they're very supportive. There's a lot of people like me. And I'd written a post that basically described my journey. And it was where I was really starting to explore my feelings and work out who and what and why I was the way I was. And I posted it and I shared it with them. And I just said, like, let me know what you think. Is this really awful, kind of thing? It was the first time I'd put my name with it. And this running group just, I don't know, fully embraced me with their love. And like I'm getting all emotional now. And they were just so supportive. They made me feel loved and understood for who I was. And they kept sharing it. And it got shared all over Facebook and everywhere. And my name was on it. And people started seeing it. And my mum saw it. And suddenly I'm like, oh no, that's not secret anymore. So then I stopped it being a secret. And now I'm just like, it's got the same name because why would I change it? But it's there. And I post probably not as regularly as I used to, because not as many things come up as they used to, but it's become more, I still work through things and I still share that, but it's more, I suppose, to help other people. Like, I remember being here and this is what I did, kind of thing, because I want other people. That's very much what I my Facebook, my Instagram, I've got TikTok, I do videos on TikTok as well, because I want people to know that actually I get it. And if they've got a question, I try and answer it, because that's what I wanted. I just wanted somebody to go, tell me it's going to be all right. Tell me what works. And I can't fix it. I can't do it for anybody, because ultimately we're in this, we've got to do it ourselves. But what I can say is this, and this work for me. Try those. And also this worked for them. Try these too. And fill up your toolbox with all these tools and hopefully something will work. So yeah, that's where my blog came from.
Love it. And something that you just said actually totally and completely set up for a question that I had in reading your blog. I read this one entry from May 12th, and basically you were very politely and nicely saying, like, I read a post that somebody had left, how getting sober is becoming sort of fashionable right now, and people who write like sobriety blogs are attention seeking and stuff. And you were just basically kind of like, so can we not share our experiences and our opinions anymore? Like, you were super kind about it, and it was just so well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was very impressed by that. And I'm just wondering, have you seen a lot of that? Because I think that is a big fear a lot of people have, is kind of like, well, should I bother saying anything? Because people will talk about it. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess that's just part of it. And
I think it's really hard. People are always going to talk, aren't they? And I can't say I've got the answers for everything, but what I do have is my experience, and there's always going to be people out there that criticize it, but you can't tell me my story is wrong, because it's my story and I've lived it. Mm-hmm. And I'm here living proof that my journey has been a bit hard, it's been a bit rocky, I've been a bit challenged, but I've got through it. And I'm not attention seeking by sharing it. I am trying to help other people in similar situations. And I get messages that aren't particularly nice, saying things that aren't particularly nice. And there's a block button. I use it.
Yeah.
But
good for you.
I think generally it's people that are saying thank you, because they feel like there's hope. And maybe that sounds really soppy, but actually when I get a message saying, do you know what, thank you, I don't feel on my own anymore, well, that just makes my day, because that's all I'm doing it for. It's not like fame. It's to let me share what I've done, and hopefully it helps. And if people don't like that, well, it says more about them, really, doesn't it? Because
yeah,
I think there's so much hate and stuff in the world. Can't we just be nice to each other?
right. I love that you know that, though, that you recognize that it says more about them.
Taken me a while.
It does. It takes a while, and sometimes I need to remind myself of that, even though like I'll be feeling inside like this churning, just like, ugh, like, okay, wait, this has nothing to do with you, but I'll have to walk myself through it. But it's just, it is so, I want to say how much I appreciate you sharing your story and how important it truly is. Like, thank you for putting up with those occasional times that somebody might not leave something super nice about it. Because the thing is, I mean, a lot of people that you don't even know, right? And haven't even heard from are benefiting behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's quite often, I've had quite a few messages from people that don't even follow me, and they've said like they're doing it, to quote one, she's doing it under the radar, because if she followed me, people would know, and she doesn't want that. But she's messaged me to tell me to keep posting because it matters to her. And actually, that's great. You don't have to follow me. I'm there. If it's helpful, go for it. But it's lovely to get messages like that, because it's like, yeah, okay, somebody out there does find it useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's so beautiful. And to hear you share that just gives me chills, right? Because like that's what it's about, right? That's that human connection of
Exactly.
being there for each other and sharing. And so as we start to wrap up, I want to ask you about your book. But really quick, I just have to say another reason, Claire, why I feel like your story in particular is so important, especially in my demographic and neck of the woods, is so many of us where I live, we have access to tons of 12-step meetings, and you have your variety of kinds of meetings, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like AA, or like they have all these different kind of branches and chapters and all these things you can do. And what I love is I don't think that I have ever interviewed anybody who eventually just did it on their own. And I think that there is so much power in your story because it's another avenue, right? It's another way that is possible. And there's plenty of people out there, I'm sure, who are in a similar spot where it's like, I don't have access to anything else. I'm going to have to somehow quit, and thinking that that can't happen. And you say that it can. And I love that. So yeah, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So thanks. No, so yeah, so as we start to wrap up, I'm wondering about your book, and I'm wondering, how did you take your blog and processing there to decide, you know what, maybe I should write a book? And I know you write fiction too, so
Yeah, well, this came first, and it was basically a lot of the people that follow me kept saying you should write a book. And I suppose if you hear it enough, eventually you're just gonna do it. And I thought, well, actually, there's a lot of people that have followed my journey right from the beginning, but there's a lot of people that haven't. And when they stumble across me now at 6.5 years sober, okay, I have wobbles. It's more anxiety than alcohol wobbles now, but I'm pretty solid. But so how it's easy to look. Actually, that's another comment I had on one of my posts the other day, and it's like, it's all right for you didn't drink very much. It's like, no, I did, trust me, I really did. So it's hard for people to see that. Maybe they don't understand the whole story. So I suppose I just thought I'd go right back to the beginning, and it was part of the working through my life really, and the way I had quite a lot of aha moments when I was writing. It's like, as you go through and you're like, well, when did I start drinking that much? When did it go from social to problem? And it was quite therapeutic. I'd heard people say writing was therapeutic, but until I'd done it, it's quite nice sometimes knowing people read it. I'm really grateful, but I'm also really like, It's like letting you into my head. When my mother-in-law read it, I was like, oh no, because she's in it. But it's just nice to sort of work through it and not kind of put it to bed, but it kind of, that chapter of my life, the drinking chapter, has gone, and that's where the book kind of helped me tie up those ends and yeah, just work through it really.
I love it. I so appreciate that journey. And also, now that you're sober, I love that you also mentioned that the days are so much longer, and realizing that, isn't it incredible what we can pack into a day now? Like,
mad.
Right?
Where did the hours come from?
I know. And so I love that you're able to, now you're writing and like with the contemporary romance and all of that, like you can follow that dream, you can work, you can be there for your kids, you're a wife. And it's just incredible how much of our life we actually get back. And we get it back, but in a much greater capacity. And I just feel like you have done that so beautifully. And so I just want to thank you so much for being on today. And
you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And where can people find you so they can follow your work and what you're doing next?
Yeah, so I've got, my website is my not so secret diary.co.uk, but you can also find me on Instagram. I'm under soberme_Claire. I'm on TikTok, where you can find my random videos of my thoughts. My books are available on Amazon, and I've got a Facebook page as well, but I think most of them link to each other, so you can pop by. It's always nice to hear from people. And
Claire, thank you so much. Like, this has been a real treat. I really appreciate it, and I just wish you all the best. Just can't wait to continue to watch you shine. So it's super exciting. So thank you for coming on today. And to the rest of you guys who are listening, remember to be kind, rewind. Thank you for the honor of your time. Take what you like and leave the rest behind.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. You can keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.